welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we are coming to you deep from the deepest, darkest parts of space.
Yeah.
We are travelling down in our high-top circus tent and we are landing upon your favourite pet or animal in order to take over your planet. For we are members of the Killer Klowns from outer space.
Yes, we are looking at the... interestingly enough, I believe this is actually part of our must-see horror feature.
It is part of our must-see horror. It is
on our poster. For some reason.
Yes, I forgot that part then. Yes, it is a must-see horror. And I did put that in my notes, in fact, that we do need to decide if this is a must-see horror. Let's just recap. It feels like... It hasn't been that long, but it feels like it has, because we used to do we tended to do like 2 every month, and we didn't do that this month.
No, I think we took Halloween. Like a slight break, because of Halloween.
No,
but it was actually...
do them consistently, because if we don't, we will be doing these until we are basically...
Until we're dead.
Yeah. We will never complete this list.
It was August that we last did it, where we looked at The Hills Have Eyes, 1977. And I believe that was a divisive one. I think you said it was must-see horror, and I said it wasn't.
Yeah,
and
I just said it was must-see horror.
Yeah.
You were just wrong.
Yeah, of course I was wrong. As we've said before, it's completely
We're
fine.
We're going to battle it out.
We must battle, yeah. We can't disagree. We must fight to the death now.
There are many on that poster that we look at and I feel like we straight away are like, you are not going to be. But, we will rewatch and we will decide. But I feel like most of ours have been so far.
Most have
been.
Yeah.
But then, because most of them have been very straightforward, ones that people know, like classic, or ones that we've covered, or ones where we've ended up doing like a remake of one that we've already seen before and things like that.
Which is it's weird because this one was on there, and this is, I'd seen this one before.
Yeah.
But this is a first time viewing for you, I believe.
It is, yeah, because I don't, that's what I mean. This one is like cult classic kind of film. But whether it would be deemed as a classic to people, because it is such a it's such a different kind of one. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
I like a mixture of, if they were all your standard, if the 100 list was basically like every Universal monster movie followed by every kind of more serious, critically acclaimed one, it would be a shitty list, And I don't necessarily want, because there are certain critically acclaimed ones, like we've just said, that certain ones that have popped up where we've been a bit more like, I'm not actually sure that is so. And then there's been ones that were mixed bag, like Event Horizon.
Yeah.
That was definitely, that was a
mix
for us.
Disagreement.
We fought that out, and, in the end, when we get to the final one of these, we will battle for
we
the final
must.
decision of who had more likes and who had more dislikes.
We will.
Who had more musts.
Well, before we get into it, as always, this is my gentle little reminder for you to hit that subscribe button, and please leave us a lovely review before you listen to too much of the episode and regret giving us a really favourable review. So, I remember because this film kind of gets into it pretty quickly. We get we get
the bopping opening song, and the theme tune that people absolutely love, which I'd never heard before. And that's an absolute. The first thing that pops in my head is, this sounds like a song from Grease 2.
Okay.
Which is a weird one to go with, but I didn't want to say Grease because I was like, well, Grease is better than this.
Grease is bang.
But this sounds like a song from Grease 2, where they basically just kind of sing what's happening in front of them as they walk around the room. And for anyone that knows that poor sequel that people dislike, but my partner loves, and I've literally seen it a million times because of that, it literally sounds like that, where it's basically exactly what you expect it to be. It's like, Killer Klowns from outer space. It's exactly like that. It's like, they're gonna turn you into candy floss and
suck your blood.
I don't know the lyrics of the song, but I'm just saying, the song was the most straightforward. I'm not gonna lie, it was a catchy little tune. I'm just saying, it just caught me by surprise that I don't know why this film caught me by surprise to have a theme tune that is so on the nose.
Yeah, it's real on the nose, on the clown nose.
But it's a film called Killer Klowns from Outer Space, so I don't know what I was really expecting from that part there.
Yeah, I'm going to kick things off with a very interesting tidbit that I think you may have, because before we recorded, you mentioned that you had some interesting tidbits. If you remember a little while ago, we did a really interesting one in The Exorcist. You had a dog shit one where it featured a real life serial killer potentially in it, and I had a really interesting one that the main character, Father Damien Carras, was raised in Scranton. Much more interesting. But now I don't know.
Now you're trying to come up with one because, by the way, I didn't mean tidbits. I meant I had notes for once. For once in a long time, I actually have notes.
Well, I actually have 2 tidbits.
Let's hear your tids.
So the first one is, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but there's a rumour that the character that you see in the opening either was Jeffrey Dahmer or was based on Jeffrey Dahmer. Because you get this really weird guy walking across the road. He's got big, thick, framed glasses. He's got blonde hair.
It's definitely based on Jeffrey.
He's carrying
Jeffrey Dahmer.
It's not him, but the rumour was that it might have been him.
Because you see that guy again when they're hooking up at the top of whatever they call it. They call it like the top of the earth or the top of the world.
Shagging point.
Yeah, the shagging place where the ice cream van shows up.
But he's got a bag full of beer.
Vans, yeah,
he's got a bag full of beer, and he's like, he says some snide comment to the police officer, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, is that based on like Jeffrey Dahmer?"
He does look like Dahmer.
And I think a lot of the things were like, because I don't know if he'd been caught at this time, maybe, so people were like, "Oh, it's Jeffrey Dahmer, or it's based on him." But I remember watching it and being like, "Oh, fucking hell, it kind of does look
like one of those urban legends where people kind of say like." Like they say in certain films, like you can see a ghost in the corner of that film. Yeah. And this one is you can see Jeffrey Dahmer. It's not so much hidden. It's not like hidden in the background. If it was like a character hidden in the background, I'd be like, yeah, maybe. Could but because he's like literally the main focus of the part of the opening scene, I'm like, that's definitely not. That's not Jeffrey Dahmer. I can clearly see it's not him.
But he looks like him.
He does. He has the glasses. He has the hair. He has the plaid shirt.
Yeah.
And he has the lust of having killed many, many boys.
Yeah, he does. He does have that lust, doesn't he? He's got the bloodlust. And then I love the ice cream lads. Like pulling up to the
Frenzy brothers.
Point. Yeah. I mean, my notes, I wrote such little notes on this, to be honest. I think I kind of like gave up about 2/3 of the way through. Not to say anything about the quality of the film, because I enjoy it, but I was like, I don't know what notes to write.
That's fine. Well, I've made quite a few notes in mine. One of the last episodes we did, whatever order this is going out in, but when we did Mouth of Madness, you pretty much led me through that, so I'm happy to lead the way with this.
Yeah, the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, so the Forensic Brothers when they come to the top of the hill, but yeah, it's an odd one. I mean, the film is like it's cheesy, obviously.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be, but it's like I was like quite like, as I'd never seen it, I thought, and I'd said this literally just before we started, I was like, this could go, for me, it could go 2 ways. This is either going to be like a fun little monster love letter to B movies, or it's going to be absolute dog shit where they're just like a bunch of clowns, but they haven't really thought it through or gone through it. They haven't really thought out the whole concept. I mean, I definitely think whoever wrote this was high as fuck the whole time.
100%.
And the producers who actually went, yeah, we'll make that movie, I think they were just all high as fuck.
So it was written by 2 brothers, Charles Chiodo and Stephen Chiodo.
Okay.
And I think this is the only thing they ever did.
Say like it was written by like David Fincher.
It was written by David
Fincher. Before he got his start, he wrote. He wrote this. Christopher Nolan wrote the first draft of this.
Yeah, he loved it, man.
Yeah. But I was drawn in pretty much straight away. I mean, obviously the dialogue and acting are pretty much of the level that you'd expect. They're not amazing. The dialogue is cheesy at times, but I think so it's like one of the earliest ones you see is of the old man and the dog.
Yeah.
And he's working through the woods talking to his dog, and he's like he sees the tent after they've all been on top of the hill. The Perenzi brothers have done their shit with we were going to get laid. They've got the two chicks eating ice cream.
We want to fuck.
Yeah, that's all the Perenzi brothers are there to do.
Just fuck. I love it.
They're there to have an ice cream van with a clown on top and to fuck and to try to fuck and fail again and again. As that kind of goofy cheeseball that you've seen in several 80s comedies. I'm not saying full of necessarily horror, but if you watch anyone's you know, from that era, there are loads of like raunchy comedies from the era. My mind's completely blank on every single one of them right now. I was about to say Goonies. I was like, that's not the right one, but it's kind of like that in the title. Animal House or whatever. But there's always these like two goofball characters who they're always together. They're brothers. That's just who they are. They're Italian.
Yeah, they're brothers. They're Italian. They try and fuck.
They fuck. They eat sausage. That's what they do.
They fucking do all that. They're really like caricature. Borderline racist, like stereotypes. They are
Italian racist.
But it's the 80s. It's cool, you know. It's fine. It's all good.
They even have the hint of the whole like, you know, the two girls in there, and yes, one of them is maybe a plus size lass, and the hint that basically we're like, well, they like ice cream, so they'll eat the ice cream, they'll eat our dick, right?
Like this sex for an ice cream is a perfectly fair and legal trade.
Exactly, and then. You've got Jeffrey Dahmer in one of those cars, and then you're
watching whacking off.
Yeah, and they're all just like sat around whacking while this weird ice cream van shows up, being like, "Who wants to get ice cream?" They're like, "I knew it was a stupid fucking idea."
Yeah,
and we get introduced to our two main characters.
I don't even remember their names. I knew none of the names of these characters.
It's I'm just completely blanked again. This is going well so far.
It is going really well.
Anyway, back to I'm just going to skip past that for a moment.
This is the quality you get on the show.
This is the quality you get. I've forgotten her name already.
I don't think it matters. I was
about to say Debbie, and I don't know if that's right now.
We can call her Debbie. I don't think anybody cares.
Anyway, after that scene, obviously they see the shooting star and they go to check it out. You know, the lad and the lass. And that's when we have the old man and the dog. And it's just some of the dialogue was just like him just walking through the front. The first thing he says when he sees this is like, when he sees this giant circus tent in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a forest, where he's like, I don't remember this being here. And then he's like, I love the circus. Yeah. He's like, let's go up and see. Maybe we can get some free passes. It's like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
So he takes the dog up. And then obviously the dog gets like a portal opens on it, and the dog just disappears. And then he tries to get in, which is the appropriate way, by the way, to act if your dog has suddenly disappeared. And it's quite obvious it's to do with this weird circus tent in the middle of nowhere. It's one of those tropes in films where a lot of times it's like, oh no, the dog went missing. Oh, it will come back later. It'll be fine, because that's just the way it works with dogs. It's like, yes, they're by your side. They've been by your side this whole time, but suddenly they're just like, oh no, I'm gone.
Yeah, I'll still come back.
Or you heard them yelp in the distance. It's like, oh, they'll be fine. You know what I mean? Some of them don't do that, but this is the appropriate level of anger of him being like, give me back my dog. You know, beating on it. He's like, oh, it's like when he punches it, he expects like obviously a tent.
Yeah.
It's metal, and he's like, oh shit. And then he grabs the braces, and it turns out that they're electrical wires, and he's just getting shocked. And then he gets burst with a ray of something, which we don't fully see at that point, but it's a cotton candy
gun,
or as in the UK, candy floss.
Candy floss, yeah.
We have a difference there. We don't call it cotton candy or candy floss. Both they look like cotton.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't floss our teeth with it, so if you're getting confused about that, Americans, because we don't generally, as a country, you're obsessed with your flossing routines, whereas as a country, but we have shit teeth. So.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe we need to start flossing.
But obviously,
our wretched teeth.
The set design on this, I thought, was really impressive. Though.
Yeah,
like the fact that it's not like a huge budgeted movie. It was like a smaller production company that made it.
$8 million, I think.
Which isn't bad, at that time, but it's still like 88. So by 88, that's like, I guess that's about the same as Mouth of Madness or something that they had. But yeah, by 88, so that was, not necessarily huge, but not small.
Yeah.
But it was a production company that I don't think lasted very long after.
No.
So I feel like this may have been part of why it was like, why did we pump so much money into this?
Well, it made like $40 million.
Yeah, it did.
So it was a
success. Yeah, for what it made.
Yeah.
But there is a certain level with a lot of it that's kind of like makeshift as well. You can tell how like makeshifty some of these rooms have been. Like just cutting up, and obviously a lot of it is like black space around everything.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we don't actually have enough room to build the whole room.
No.
So we'll just make it we'll just put black curtains around the room, and then we'll just put some wooden doors in bright colours.
Yeah, that's kind of how they do it, like a circular elevator.
Well, you have one bit when one of the clowns like goes in and he's like doing levers, and the lever is obviously it's basically like, you know, when you were a kid and you had like Skittles.
Yeah.
It's basically like one of those Skittles where they take one of the balls and then stuck on top of it, and that's the levers that they're now doing. And obviously a lot of this is all made out of like things like food or popcorn or like lots of like in general easy to kind of get things. And obviously the designs of the clowns themselves, I mean, they're cool in this weird kind of way because they're kind of misshaped. You know, they're not quite like fully formed like creatures in some ways. It sometimes reminds me a bit like the goblins in Troll 2.
A little, yeah. They're
better than that. They're far better than that. But you know,
like they look like clowns, but they're more like aliens. Like they're quite like bulbous, and they have like these weird lumps and bumps and strange faces.
Yeah,
they look humanoid, but they don't particularly look human. And I think like there was this one part where I was like, the clowns are actually like strangely creepy in some moments. There's a bit kind of after the opening, and that's what I mean. Like, where I quickly lost track of the film and stopped making notes. But there's a bit where the clowns start going back into town, and they kind of like all turn and kind of start walking there, and it has that weird like Michael Myers lifelessness, just like walking creepiness to it. Yeah. But I generally found that once we got out of the opening, which I will jump back to because I'm just getting ahead of myself as always. Like it got to a point where it was like every scene is basically a clown doing something wacky and catching someone, and I was like, this is just the film. But
that is the film,
yeah.
But there were things about that did make me kind of like it because I thought they were quite. Now I do have a tidbit that just popped into my head that I forgot to. So I literally was just googling it as you did it because I heard a tidbit about it, but I couldn't remember what the film was.
Yeah.
So the masks. Obviously. So a lot of people don't actually have the necessarily the original or all of them because some studios took some of them or bought some of them, and then they were reused in other films, so you actually can see some of the masks be repurposed.
I heard films. They were repurposed. I don't know what into.
And it's Ernest, Scared, Stupid. You see two of them where they've been repurposed to be used as trolls. Okay. And that's where the troll thing goes in my head.
Makes sense.
They've been repurposed to be used. So Ernest, relating with a kind of Halloween-y kind of around that kind of time. A lot of people watch that in America. Ernest was like a slapstick comedy kind of guy, gets into these, like a hillbilly who gets into these awkward situations kind of thing. Kind of like their Chaplin, I guess. But
yeah. The Mr. Bean.
But I believe he voiced one of the characters in Toy Story, the actor who does it. But
Ernest himself.
But anyway, Ernest Scared Stupid, you can see the trolls reused in that kind of part. So they've kind of been taken and they used parts of sets and stuff like that because it cost so much money, obviously. But then the studio went bankrupt, I believe. Not straight after it, but the production company went bankrupt. Which is why when you saw the production, you might not be like, I don't recognise that one. Because they went bankrupt, so a lot of that stuff was all just basically like thrown, destroyed, or sold off kind of thing.
Damn.
So like certain companies in the back of their storage were like, we have these. We'll just reuse that stuff for like smaller budgeted films. Yeah, we'll reuse that.
Let's reuse it.
So I think it's using that one, but I swear people said like there's a whole bunch of different films where you can see like either props or their faces like pop up in different forms where they've been like reused, repainted.
I could imagine that because they do have quite a grotesque look to them. Not overly gross.
You would recognise it if you saw it again.
Probably.
If you were walking down the street.
I would recognise this man. I would recognise them.
So I mean, there are some concepts that you've got to kind of. I think this film you do have to be in on the joke.
Yeah.
If you're coming and you're trying to think that this is going to be like, it says Killer Klowns. If you're thinking that they're going to be like menacing ass clowns that are going to be scaring the shit out of you, that's not really what you've got here. You've got a B movie, and it is clowns.
It's a B movie.
It's clowns who, to start with, and I was worried about this at first. To start with, the main way in which they get anyone is turning them into candy floss,
which is kind of cool.
It is like turning them into these big like transformables. It's an inventive way to bring that kind of carnival fun aspect into it. But there is a point that I was worried. I was like, this is going to get old fast, and that's all they're going to frickin' do because the first 3 or 4 people, it's just cotton candy.
Yeah, just
it's just that they get that. So it's like, I was like, that's great, but I would still like a little bit, because at that point I was like, this is delving on the point of almost being like a B sci-fi, less than a B horror kind of thing. And for the first 20 minutes or so, I was a bit like, this is fun, you know, in the same way as like Gremlins or Critters, and I like those kind of creature features kind of thing. I enjoy them; they're fun. But I was like, even them, I'd say, had a little bit more dread right now than I'm feeling from these clowns, because it's just kind of them being weird. Their voices also was a thing for me. I didn't expect their voices to sound like Ewoks. They kind of sound like Ewok voices. An Ewok voice. I don't know why. When I hear a clown, I don't know why I expect deeper. I expected them to be deeper, not squeaky.
Yeah, I guess aliens, though.
They don't actually make that many noises or even talk that.
There's like one or two that make the most noises.
Yeah, I think that's about it. So it's not really that's a big thing. I was just like, their voices aren't like, they're definitely not. So we're definitely not going for scary.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and you'd definitely be. And some people are scared of clowns and stuff like that. And some people might be creeped out in certain scenes. There are a few scenes, especially when they show like their teeth and stuff, where they're like, yeah, that's kind of creepy kind of thing. They're kind of that. But generally, this isn't the kind of film you're coming into. So if you were expecting like a proper, like a gory, full-on horror with clowns, this ain't your horror film. Go watch Terrifier.
Yeah.
Or something like that. You know what I mean? Go watch one of those kind of ones. So we get introduced to some of the other kind of surrounding characters. One thing I did like, actually, when the couple like go in and they see, like, because that's what they see the candy floss in these kind of nutsack shapes.
Yeah, they're like big hanging nutsacks, aren't they?
The big giant ones.
Like when you get out of the bath, you know, real pink and droopy, like, just like hang your brain, you know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They just, all I can think of is that they just look like different shapes of nut, because they weren't all the same size.
Yeah, big ass.
This is like an array of cotton candy nutsacks. Yeah. Basically. Some people's dream to have a cotton candy nutsack.
Yeah, and then they drink from the nutsack as well.
Exactly.
Just go in there.
As I said, your dream.
My dream. Yeah.
So they're through there, but one thing I remember at first questioning was the when he shoots the popcorn gun at them. And the first thing I was like, why the fuck are you like? I was like, what did that do? And I was thinking in my head, I was like, because it's all over there. I was like, it's like a tracker or something.
Yeah, that's what I was.
It's going to be so the clowns can find it. And then obviously that turns out to have a much more menacing and quite fun little thing that happens, because the popcorn turns into little clowns, little worm clowns kind of thing.
Really weird.
But I thought that was kind of cool. It was like little when the guy gets pulled into the dust pit, and I was like, you're literally seeing him slowly go down, like he's getting completely like eaten
just
away as he's
up.
Going in.
One thing I fucking loved is when the main couple kind of run off the spaceship, and they get the blow up balloon dog and start chasing after them like a sniffer dog. That was fucking class, man.
Those are the bits that really made me warm to the film, to be honest.
Yeah.
The fact that they had really carefully thought about the clown.
Yeah.
It's a clown, so what things can we do that kind of give us that kind of dark little humour about it? So when they're chasing after him with that little dog going through the forest.
So funny.
You know, the popcorn, the cotton candy gun, those things are all like that we've been introduced so far. They're all little like kind of little teasers of like, that's a fun little part. So I was saying about the characters that we do meet. So we meet Detective Mooney, who's one character I do have
the
down.
Moon Man.
Okay, who is a asshole, rough kind of older cop. He's a total asshole, but he's a bit of a bigot. He basically wants to, like, those guys at the beginning are kind of implied to be like, you know, college kids, but there's also like a bent of a kind of like a homosexual kind of, where he talks about Detective Officer Hanson.
Yeah.
To have a little throwback there for 90s kids.
The boys.
So he's kind of, he kind of points out towards like Hanson, like, oh, have you got a thing for these boys kind of thing? And because they've got that kind of tone. I don't actually remember if we ever actually see what happens to those guys. They end up in a cell with the clown.
They do, but I don't think anything happens.
I don't think, because they're one of the few people that they don't just kill for no reason.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't think we actually see. But the other thing I also found about Detective Mooney as a character is the fact that, to me, his face his build and his face, he kind of looked like one of the clowns.
Yeah.
His face is odd looking. He's like got quite a munched up face. His brow and stuff kind of lined up with some of the clowns' faces. I was like, if we put a clown wig on you,
you'd kind of be alright.
You just basically are, but yeah, he's basically a cop who he's like, no, you must follow every single rule to every single part. Yeah. And if you don't, I'm basically going to beat the shit out of you, you know.
Yeah, we're just gonna fucking batter you. Police, like, there was, at this point in time, there was, you know, to them, there was no police brutality, you know. It was completely fine to just batter suspects.
Yeah.
You know. And make homophobic comments to
luckily,
your
that's
police
completely
officers.
gone away.
Yeah, luckily that no longer exists. Racism, homophobia, sexism has been banished from the world. Yeah. You know, it never exists. We live in perfect harmony.
Detective Mooney's left around.
No, we live in perfect harmony now.
And at this point, you've got Officer Hanson, who we find out is the boyfriend of the lass, who I will at some point remember.
Aye.
The lass, that's his ex is Officer Hanson with the guy that's there.
Yeah.
At this point, Officer Hanson seems like he's a perfectly kind of like, oh, yeah, so he's going to be like our hero character. He's going to be like that guy. But I feel like very quickly I started to feel that he was a bit of a dick, and I thought he was also a little bit of a perv. He was very weird with her. He was very controlling with her.
Well, it's really weird because they're like, these two, you know, the main characters were at, you know, Shag View or whatever they call it, and then they go there, and then all of a sudden, as soon as they're like, oh, the Killer Klowns are here, we need to get Hanson, he's going to be the one who will believe us.
Yeah.
It then starts this thing where Hanson's like, nah, you're still my girlfriend. She's like, yeah, you're my boyfriend, and you're my boyfriend as well, and it's like, what? It's like really weird.
Well, I think she did say the X.
She did say X,
but
it was also
the whole
very
film
much
was
like...
very confusing. Yeah, it is. And when we get to the ending, it's like I'm jumping ahead a bit, but it was just something that really spun out to me while we're talking about him being a weirdo. Officer Hanson. So yeah, you've got those control. Like when they're in the police car together, she's like, "Oh no, you like." He's very much like, "You're not doing that," and "Oh, you could be in danger.
Yeah.
You're going to the house. You're not staying with us. There's no chance of it." Which perfectly fine, reasonable, acceptable things to get her out of danger. But it's just the fact that he's like just so like, no, you're doing exactly what I said.
Well, he is the law.
Yeah, he's the law kind of thing. But it changes from the fact that he's so like with Mooney, he was quite like. He seems to be like, no, you know, we have to work with him, but there are, you know, some things we bend, you know, some things just, they're not that big of a deal. You know, we don't do that. But, so because he's like built like that scene, when you see him like that in the next scene, you're like, you're just coming across a bit of a dick. Like, this isn't your, like, she's not your girlfriend. The guy in the back who's not saying much, but looking like he's like, how the fuck did I not know her ex was a cop?
Yeah.
But the weirdest one, I'm going to point it out now because I think I'll forget about it later. If you watch at the very end of the film, so when they've got to the end of the film, it doesn't establish that she's suddenly changed and been like, oh no, you are my boyfriend again now.
Yeah.
And yet at the end, Hanson, she stood next to who is her boyfriend. Hanson has his hands on her shoulder and he's like massaging her.
Yeah.
He's holding her very closely. He's massaging her, which I was already like, okay, so you've just survived this. Hanson, you were dead. Just because she thought you were dead, does that now mean you're back in?
Yeah, like, am I back in with a shot?
Yeah, like I'm done. Like you thought I died, great. But he's doing this, but then he starts muzzling his head into the back of her
doesn't
hair,
he?
And not in a normal way. It looks like he's kissing while muzzling his head in. And I gotta be honest, the actress is like smiling, but she looks a little bit like,
what the fuck?
What the fuck are you doing?
Cool cut.
Like, it was not in the script for you to start like nuzzling and kissing or eating my hair or whatever the fuck you're doing back there.
This man has become horny all of a sudden.
It was just such a bizarre fucking scene at the end to just have this kind of, yes. Hello, love, while I'm rubbing your shoulders and I start muddling and he's like, you can tell he's like sniffing and kissing at her hair.
It's fucking weird,
and
man.
It's like, what the fuck? And then next to her, and then it's just there. Next to her is the boyfriend, like,
just like,
yay, we saved the world. What the fuck are you doing to my girlfriend?
Let's just leave this.
Are you still my girlfriend?
Yeah.
Do I lose because I didn't almost die? Like, I was with you the whole time.
Yeah, it's just...
I brought you into it, but also I did kind of help, you know, but no, apparently the officer wins now.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm about to drag her off and she's mine now.
Yeah, it's fucking weird, man. There was one scene that I did think was real creepy, and that is when the clown is trying to lure the little girl out of the restaurant. That was a bit where I was like, oh fucking hell, this has gone a bit dark. You know? He's trying to oh, come here, love.
That bit I did think was generally creepy.
Yeah.
This was the point where I was going from, I was like the aliens went into like the drugstore and stuff and started doing like you start seeing them around town doing
the old man's pranging out and he's like trying to talk to him.
Yeah, and definitely not the actor's voice. That was like a dubbed voice. It was like a weird, and for some reason they made him sound. He sounded like an old woman.
Yeah.
In the voice of this old man.
Yeah.
And it was a very weird one. But yeah, they were just kind of like trashing things. But I was literally, and again we had like kind of, and that was the point where I was starting to be like, I mean, this is fun, and they're trying to add little fun antics into it, but is this all it's going to be? It's just cotton candy. So I was very happy when we got to the next two scenes, which is the child where you've got the bigger, kind of the fatter clown.
Yeah, the big lad.
And this is what I said, like the teeth. Like, he shows his teeth, and he's like, come here. And she's drawn in while they're in not McDonald's.
Not
McDonald's.
McDonald's.
Looks like a McDonald's.
Yeah.
And she's like drawn right to the door, and you're getting, that's like one of those very like kind of like a little bit like you're wondering, is this going to go? Now, because of the kind of film it was, I was thinking so it was going to stop the girl from getting getting killed, but it was still properly creepy, the look in his face, and the more it grows, because at first he's kind of looking a bit happy, but it's also the fact that they don't really try to mask themselves that much.
No,
they kind of stand there, but they mainly look fairly menacing. That they're just trying to be like that. They don't try to be like dancing around.
No, they don't.
Stuff like that. They are just like, yeah, I'm here, making weird stuff happen in front of you, but I am coming closer. Like, I'm coming in. Like, they do funny things, like the little one that rides up onto the gang, which
I'd have fucking battered that one. Genuinely. Like, imagine us at like 15 years old.
Yeah.
And like one of those things comes up to it. We'd have tied it to the train tracks. Like, we'd have tortured that thing for like a weekend and then just put it on the train tracks. Like, I'm surprised they didn't.
That little one, I will admit, when that little one rode up on the bike, like, obviously they trashed his bike. His bike. Oh, poor little thing. And yet, for some reason, that little one made me want to go like, bash it.
Yeah.
Bash its skull and you just suddenly they just all start beating it to death. Just killing it.
Just have a fucking pop at it and then just fucking brutalise it. And then upload it to like to Facebook. Upload the torture to like Facebook and get on the dark web, you know.
This is like the first scene though where I think there's that extra where you actually get something that's a little bit more, slightly more like graphic or like more, because obviously the gang hangs around in a classic 80s gang.
Of course.
They've got their leather vests on. They've got their head bandanas. You know, they're just hanging out. They are a mixed race of all kinds of races all together.
All races and creeds are allowed, and women are allowed within the gang, you know.
Because remember, the true enemy are clowns.
The true enemy are clowns from outer space, you know.
But it's just the way that, you know, he messes with him, and because he is the little one, there is a kind of both funny, but also like, I was waiting there, and there was a part of me when he pulled out the box, and I was like, "Oh, please knock his head off!" And he knocked his head off. He literally rips it, and you do see the little bit of like the inside the head and stuff like that. So it's the first It's the first scene where it's like, something else has happened to them, some other kind of death, and it's the way it just flies into the dustbin, and I'm like, that's just comedy. I mean, I would have been happy with him being the little one being beaten to death, but
and his head like put on a stick, you know, or his flesh being consumed. But
I'll settle for decapitated flying head.
Yeah, and then you get the other one where it's like the what is it? It's the fucking shadow
puppets. Again, another cool kind of use of that kind of obviously the little one with the bike was that kind of trope of like them riding around on the little bicycle, which kind of doesn't work because it's normally a big clown on a little bicycle, not a little clown on a little but you know, but then pulling stuff out of nowhere like the gloves is another whole kind of thing. But the shadow puppet one, when after they've dropped off what's her face at the house, and you got Hanson and other lad boyfriend one.
Mike, apparently his name
Mike
is.
There you go, Mike.
Yeah. Mike.
just to confirm, that's Mike. You get the little one, but when you get the shadow puppet scene, it's a fun way of taking in those little tropes that you might know about clowns, or you might know just like fun little antics you'd relate to. Like, I could see a clown doing like a little puppet show or a thing like that. Because obviously you do get a puppet show early because it comes out with the ray gun and shoots, and that's another cotton candy.
A little Punch and Judy almost.
Where he like kills, he completely destroys, vaporizes the other puppet, so whoever's there, and then goes over and blasts him with his cotton candy ray. But
look, what's he doing?
But the shadow puppet one, he goes for all those different ones, including like what is it? Like a D-Day kind of one, like the war kind of one. They're like, all the old people are like, "Yay, look at this." Kind of thing.
And when we killed those Nazis.
And Hanson and Mike are watching on, and they're like, okay, we're just gonna... Hanson's like, no, we're just gonna watch this. We're just gonna see what happens. And Mike's more like, we should go and do something. Like, they're probably gonna like die. Or
they're gonna kill a bunch of old people.
It's gonna die. But they're like, well, they're just doing a shadow puppet show. That's fine. It's fun. What can they do? He's not actually stood next to them yet, kind of thing. And he does have like a little bag next to him, so you... At the same time, you're wondering whether something's going to burst out of the bag, or you know what I mean, because it's jiggling about. I think the popcorn's in the bag.
Popcorns.
But it's just really fun when it turns into a T-Rex and just like gobbles them up.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's not graphic, it's not like horrific, but it's just kind of like, that was fun. Which is also then followed by the weird. The car drives, but it drives in like a stop motion kind of way, like it's not actually driving.
It's weird, man.
So it goes towards them, but in a stop motion, while the clown like jumps in the air.
Yeah,
I think it's like Mike. They're like, where did he go? And like Mike's like, he's gone right up there.
Yeah,
he's just like staring up. He's like, he's gone. He's right up there. It's just like it's just an odd
very
kind
weird
of
film. Isn't it?
It's weird, but I understand completely why it's like a cult classic kind of one.
And then we get you get a scene where like Mooney arrests one, and then they blow the razor, and it grips him around his throat and like smashes his head into the jail cell. That's quite a fun scene. I love the way Mooney's just like, I don't give a fuck. Like, this thing's just some lad messing about. Well, I'm going to arrest you. That's an arrestable offence, you know? And then obviously he dies, and they end up using his body as like a ventriloquist puppet, which is a puppy. Ventriloquist puppet, which is fun.
I love that movie. Actually, I like that movie scene because he's just there because he thinks that this is just like a prank.
Yeah,
he's just there, like all of the phone lines you can see going off. Like, again, remind me of something like in Gremlins when they're getting all the phone calls and like, what do you mean there's this going on? What do you mean there's this? But instead of because Mooney's just such a dick and just stubborn in his old ways, he's like, no, they're definitely pranking me. Like, every time, like, more phone lines are going off, people all over the city, and like more people. He's heard a couple of phone calls of like, you're seeing clowns everywhere. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, what's going on?
Kind of thing. But it's just the way he just like sits there reading his magazine, just like, this isn't happening. Just smoke my cigar. I don't give a fuck.
To be a small town sheriff, you know.
Yeah, that's the life that you want. They also have scenes like, which I thought was quite cool, which did actually, on the Gremlins point, remind me when Hanson goes up to the actual whatever it is on top of the world, the shagging spot. Yeah. And they go to the car, and it's like. It's all webbed over, cobweb, it's pink, cobwebby.
There's just cum everywhere.
Glasses. There's just glasses inside them.
There's just bus all over the place. They're like, somebody's like, what is this? It's white. And then they're like, taste
just
it.
Testing it.
I don't know what this is. Not cotton candy. I need more. And he just eats like a handful.
Mine's salty. That's weird. Mine's pineapple.
Yeah, mine tastes like pineapple.
It sounds kind of like something they do on like South Park or something.
Definitely does.
There's like a play on it.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
Yeah, but that was kind of. I found it kind of like just the look of it. I thought because it's got that kind of. It's candy, but it's like it's also at the same time it like reminds you of like webbing, or like in Gremlins it has that scene when the mum goes up to the attic after they've all like hatched. Yeah, and it has like that kind of ooze and
like
there's
the
kind
slimy
of like
eggs.
Slimy, but there's a kind of webbing over the eggs, and it's old room, and it has that really uncomfortable, like disgusting looking feel, and that just kind of reminded me, but with candy floss. Yeah, but it just kind of like an unsettling kind of what's happened here kind of thing for the characters.
There's cum everywhere. I think
that would be some people's worst nightmare, by the way. Not cum everywhere.
Cum.
Yeah, some people's worst nightmare would be cum everywhere.
There's just cum everywhere. But there's cum everywhere.
If you've ever held a candy floss for a while, you know that it starts to basically melt. And, like the sugar drips onto you. For some people, the idea of being sticky is the worst thing that could ever happen to them. Like, people have literal, like, obviously there's a fear for everything and there's a disease for everything, but people have literal fears of the idea of like just having like sticky fingers.
I hate that. It's
that kind of sticky feeling.
Yeah, it's
like,
bobbing.
Fucking can't get rid of it.
I have to wipe my hands after every bite of food if I use my hands. You know,
so now imagine your whole body is covered in that. And now imagine it's cum.
Now imagine it's salty cum. Like Spider-Man's web.
But yeah, I liked the popcorn monsters.
They were fun.
Like little piranhas and things like that. Like it all added to these little inventive kind of moments.
Yeah. Then she gets the Debbie. That's her name.
I did say Debbie. I was right at the start of the episode. I just didn't trust myself.
You didn't back
I was going to change to Lindsay.
Lindsay. She suits a Lindsay as well.
It's a Debbie or a Lindsay. Yeah. She's that kind of character.
But when she fights them off, they then catch her
in the bathroom.
Bubble. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Fun. That she goes. It's like a big balloon. Isn't it? The big balloon that she's like caught in. I kind of liked that idea. There was one thing I've got here. So like, because it's so weird because you've got like the cops and obviously they're chasing them around the streets and stuff like that. But do you remember when there was that whole UK clown like
not
sighting?
just UK, worldwide.
Oh yeah, it was like Canada, France had like huge one, like big like problems with that kind of thing. Where you had that whole UK. So I was literally, it reminded me of that while I was watching. So I like Googled and there's still to this day, there's still a whole page if you go to like West Midlands Police or any other like police area it sends you to. There's still, if you write in like UK Killer Clown. Yeah, there's still a whole page on the website that tells you all about like what you should do and like how it's not actually illegal to wear a clown costume, but you should do this. But if you're not aware of this, which like was a huge thing back in like about 10 years ago, I think
2016.
2016. So basically, there were sightings all over. Basically, you'd be walking like through the park, and suddenly you just see a fucking clown stood in front of you.
I never saw one, but I heard a lot of them. You know?
They pretty much like most parts of especially around the UK, most parts of the country found like at least somewhere where they found someone who was doing it. It was taken to all kind of like fucked up levels with some of them. In somewhat like France had ones where they literally had like gangs of clowns walking down the streets.
Nice, I heard, man.
Yeah, things like that. We had one of those in the UK where someone went because one of them went viral because it was a clown blocking their car.
Yeah.
But then there was another one where the clown came out with a machete in their hand and the person ran into them, basically. They ran into the clown.
Fucking word.
It's the appropriate thing. If you see a clown with a machete, you run that fucker down. But it's just weird that like it suddenly popped back into my head. I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that in a while. Like, and these are much more terrifying than these clowns. That was legitimately like I know people who were literally like who had seen them and they were like literally that was the scariest fucking thing.
Yeah, it'd be horrendous.
And it was a point when we always used to like back in like say Churchtown, walking from the park to mine, or when you go into my house, and it was one of those places where you always expect to see. Oh, I did see one. I saw one in Gloucester near the Asda. I saw one like standing there,
nice,
like, in the middle of the night. But luckily, I was going past it in a vehicle, not walking through that bit. But I was just like, but. It still is like, and again, we're talking about like some mythical beast. It was just some dickhead teenager in a fucking mask.
Of course it was.
You know, who if he had actually come towards you, unless it was one with the weapons, then you might have just had the inclination to just I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
And that's it. It was like when it's that thing of it's not creepy at all. Yeah. And then you're there and you're like, oh, fuck, this is actually really fucking weird, you know?
When you're walking for a park by yourself and suddenly there's someone stood in a clown mat, anyone stood in any Halloween costume, to be honest, it would just be a bit like, especially when it wasn't Halloween, it was like, this is fucking weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyone who walks down, if I put on one of my masks now, if you put on your leather face mask and just walk around the streets, people are going to be fucked up. If I put on Michael Myers and walk down the road, people are going to be like, it's not fucking Halloween. Why are you fucking walking around in that? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
But no, it was just a part that just
it
popped
did.
It's far darker than anything here. But yeah, it was a weird time for about a month where the world turned into Killer Klowns.
Killer Klowns. It was the sequel, man.
Yeah.
Well, they then decide, all right, we've got to free Debbie from this balloon, so they go back to the ship, and that's where we see they put like the crazy straw into one of the
when they're
cotton candies
when they're inside the cotton candy ball sacks.
Yeah,
they fucking drink of that cotton
candy.
They
drain the ball sack. They drain the sack, and it is fucking weird, but it's kind of funny because they've got like a crazy straw,
Yeah, it's weird, but it's kind of an interesting way that they're using that kind of thing. I was thinking at the start that these eggs are for eating. Like either we were going to see them eating the can, like where they're being absorbed into it, or we're going to like that. We see them drinking the blood, but the blood doesn't look like normal blood because I imagine it's now like syrup. Basically,
yeah, I imagine that
they've turned it into like a delicious syrup that anyone would want to drink from that delicious ball sack.
Yeah, anyone wants to drink the nut juice.
Actually, before they get into the building, though, there was one thing that then popped into my head at the end as like a little continuity, and I'm not saying continuity is correct because the structure of this film doesn't completely work at times. For instance, when the clowns are first spreading around the town, several of the same clowns keep popping up in the scenes together when they're in a different place. Two of the clowns, like the little clown and the very tall clown, for instance, I don't know the difference between. And obviously later we find out there are way more, but these are definitely those same ones.
Yeah,
they're in the drugstore, but then there are scenes where like they're all together outside of a door, and they're the same characters outside, or the little one goes to the gang while at the same time somehow being in the drugstore. And it keeps popping up like it's the same time. It's not saying it's different times. And it's just that. But again, it's this kind of film. Continuity is not a big thing.
No, it's going out the window.
It's not a bit. But there's a bit with the pies, with the security guard outside. So he's outside of the carnival where they've now landed their big top tent. Spaceship. And when you get the classic trope of all of the clowns coming out of the car.
Yeah, that's class.
So one by one, which is, again, really fun. And then having their cream pie.
They give him a fucking cream pie.
Yeah.
All 12.
He literally says, "What are you going to do with those pies, boys?" These acidic cream pies, these edible, pies. Not the kind of cream pies you look at.
No, I love them cream pies. Yeah. Not those cream pies that we're fans of.
But yeah, it then has this melty effect because they're like acidic.
Yeah.
Because they start to like, or they're absorbing or something, but they start to melt him away, like down. So it gives us this idea that that's their play again on another play on those tropes, which I thought was really cool. The way he just kind of melts down and you see his skeleton hanging out, and then they put the cherry on top.
It's so cool,
which is a beautiful cherry on top of that scene. But to jump just again to the end. For my continuity error of that is, in the very final scene, what do they get on their faces?
They get pied.
They get pied.
They get cream pied.
They get cream pied at the end. And this is not the two boyfriends cream.
No, it's not. That's where it seems like it's going, but they get a surprise cream pie.
But because they said... But again... And it's not that kind of film to follow it, but in my head, all I could think at the very end of this film was, right, so we end it like a funny, like, hey, we got cream pies on us, like, at the end of the film. And I can't say that word seriously. We get pies on us, but at the very end of the film, they get those. But in my head, all I could think was, yes, and then they cut to black while they're laughing because they've got cream pies on them.
Yeah.
In my head, the ending of this film is very dark because the next moment they start to realise they're acid and burning them.
Where did they come from?
I think they're just falling from the shit, like the debris that's coming down.
Maybe.
So there's also the fact that in a second they may have a giant part of the spaceship just going along.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that, like, in my head, all I can imagine the next moment was basically like they just start screaming, like, "Oh my god!" The skin's peeling away because these cream pies have landed, and as we said before, they're like acid pies. They're like, and like he's still sniffing her hair, but now it's like breaking off, and he's like sucking them up like spaghetti.
Yeah, he's like drinking them.
He's like, I'll eat your skin now because I can.
Yeah,
because your skin is peeling off, and I'll deliciously eat it. And that's Hanson. But that was the dark vision that popped into my head with the visions pies. Of doom. I was like, wait a sec, you said those pies were acidic.
Yeah,
and now it's a fun moment at the end of the film. I do not accept this. I
don't. No.
So that is my fan fiction. I'm gonna write. I'm gonna write the sequel, not a full sequel. Literally the last 2 minutes after the black scene.
Oh yeah, you're gonna write. It's got to be very erotic as well. You know, it's got to be about 2 minutes of melting and then like an hour of eroticism, just to end it.
Yeah, it's followed by melted bodies that are
making love.
Like their skin is peeling off, but they're making love. They're making love and they're making cream pies.
Yeah, very similar to the necromantic episode I did, which was fucking bogging. It's fucking really fucking gross.
The darkest timeline.
That's the darkest timeline.
You also get the Perenzi brothers inside as we're inside the ship now. We've talked about the ball sacks that they see.
This is literally
the Perenzi brothers falling into the ball pit, and they've been asking about like, does Debbie have roommates? He's like, yeah, they got ones with really big tits. Now get in the van, we need to go and save the day. But
and can you read the last note I had?
The clowns with big tits.
Yeah, I just noticed that there's just like 2 clowns with big tits, and the Perenzi brothers just fucking go ham on them in my fanfiction.
They literally. The Perenzi brothers are sat there, and we don't actually see necessarily anything happen to them, but they have kiss marks afterwards, so we know something happened.
They just fuck.
That's another. Bust. There's a porno out there. The Perenzi brothers with the Killer Klowns just going at it. But they're sat there. But it's also the fact that this is what goofball characters they make, is that they legitimately ask the question, are they Debbie's roommates?
Yeah.
Like as if it's like, look at these clowns in giant wigs, these huge beasts, not even human size.
These absolute bogging tarts.
And then, because he said earlier they had big tits, but these aren't just normal big tits. These are big tits that appear to be moving around.
Yeah.
Because the boobs are like moving in their chest. They're bobbing up and down, like as if they're sort of crawling around.
And they're not just like big tits. They're like barrels of oak. They're like massive. They're like bigger than like car tires.
Yeah, bigger than their heads.
Yeah,
and then here are the Perenzi brothers again, and this is a cult film, so someone's got that kink. Someone wants their kink. Someone
discovered that.
Loves
kink.
The killer clown porn of killer clown. They're writing into Pornhub killer clown with big tits.
Yeah,
that is their kink. That is what they want to see.
I mean, I like that. I like that was the last note I wrote. It was just the clown with big tits.
You made it a fair point through the film.
I did, and then I was just like, you know what? I've seen the highlight, the clown with the big tits, and now just wrap this.
I mean, a lot of my enjoyment came actually at this point in the film came from these moments that I won about. Basically, like little things that I felt were errors or bits that were missed out, where I was filling in the blanks in my head.
Yeah.
Another one where I filled in the blanks was, you know, when they find the balloon with Debbie inside of it,
yeah,
but you can't actually see where Debbie is inside of it. So you know what you're saying, but you can't actually see through it.
Yeah.
So what does Hanson do? He pulls out his gun and just shoots the balloon. In my head, I was literally like waiting for like. So when does the dead body drop out?
Yeah.
Just like a dead body, just like button on the van. I'm like, oh shit.
I was thinking, you've not got like maybe you've got a knife, or a pen knife,
just to pop it. But no, it's just like pull out my gun. And it doesn't even. It's not like, oh, I'll be careful. I'll just shoot like the side. No, I'm going to shoot dead in the middle. Yeah. And hopefully it doesn't kill Debbie inside of it.
If it kills her, then I've saved her a horrible death. If I've saved her, then I'm the hero.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. There we go. Now I get to sniff your hair, right?
Yeah, I'm the hero deal. Anyway.
I get to sniff your hair.
I'm the hero anyway.
This whole end part though does again. I do really like the set pieces. The big rooms, you know, as I said, they might be like maybe done a bit cheaper at some points, but they're kind of cool. They go into several different places the whole time they're going through. It might be a little bit why why you might have felt it went a bit long at this point, because it does feel like they just go from room to room to room to room. You know, they're going for a maze of rooms and then big doors, little doors, tiny doors.
Yeah,
you know, to make their way through before they make it into the climactic moment, which. This is the part that actually made me really excited for the game that's coming out. But because I don't know that, but it was the fact that, well, actually, the whole film, because if you think about it, you know, when they're making these kind of things, you know, like games like Destroy All Humans and stuff like that.
Banging.
You know, and I think there's a little bit from what I've seen of the clip, a little bit that reminds me a little bit of that kind of Destroy All Humans kind of style. But what I'm really hoping to see is all of these little things that we've said. You know, there's like 7 or 8 different ways that they're able to use their abilities, their powers. The pies, the shadow puppets, the popcorn monsters. If they can bring all of those abilities into the actual game, I was like, actually, you know what? This game is actually, we've had a lot of games recently. We've had
Texas Chainsaw,
Evil Dead, things like, and they've all worked really well. But in this kind of fun I could see this being one that if it does include these kind of fun moments, I could see this one possibly being one that works could end up being like one that's almost the best for an adaptation. Even the fact that it has a final boss. It has a big... Because this is what the climax is in. And I kind of like the fact that it kind of feels like they get to the final boss when they get into the room. They get into the room and there's more clowns and there's loads of clowns now. But they're all terrified of something. And this is when down like a kind of puppet comes the big clown. And,
maybe.
And like I could, I could see you like playing through the game, and then at the end, like at some part of the game, you've got here it is, here's the big final boss clown kind of thing. It just works as a game for me. I can see why someone's like, I should make this into a game because it makes sense. It's
interesting because it's being made by one of the teams that worked on Friday the 13th. So I'm just on the website now, and it's going to be.
I know you play as the clowns.
Three clowns against 7 humans.
Yeah.
So and I saw like a trailer for it, and I know that you can put people into those candy cotton ball sacks.
Yeah.
You'd expect that. Yeah, you expect it. But what the game will be like, I don't really know.
It feels like it is still going to be... I mean, I could have seen how this game actually could have worked as like a standard, going through levels to get to a final boss kind of standard.
Yeah.
That kind of structure. But it feels like it is more of a Friday the 13th. That kind of... that style and structure of the game, where ones against ones. But even then, like, one thing that, that kind of works, and one thing that sadly... some of them like are great, but sometimes can get a little bit samey, is because some of the you haven't got that many options from the films of ways that you can kill, so they have to come up with their own stuff. So certain films don't lead themselves as much to it because it's like, well, they kill with a knife. That's all they do, or that's all they do in the so you can't. Whereas at least now you can have different clowns with different ability. I can see how it would be fun. But
I don't know whether we'll get this big fuck off clown in it,
Yeah, that's more my question, because that seems more like it could work really well if you were playing it in a standard structure game. This would be cool to get to like the final level and you've got to beat the final big boss, like giant clown. But in this one, obviously, it's they're fighting and they're just basically trying to survive. The Perenzi brothers look like they died by getting exploded.
Yeah.
They seem like they're in there. They say at the end they survived because they were inside the back, but the back...
They're hidden in the freezer.
But even that part still looked like it was getting pretty fucking...
it got fucking...
The whole thing was but I don't know why I'm trying to think of general physics and laws of physics within this film.
Yeah.
Including the way that Hansen finally, obviously, as the big hero man, is the one that defeats the big clown when he picks him up. And I really liked the effects and stuff of the huge clown picking him up, lifting him in the air, and he bursts his nose. You're just like, how the fuck are you going to get out? Like, what are you going to do? And then he just grabs his badge and bursts his nose, which I don't even know if he knew was. For all he knew, was that
when he shot one on the nose, he shot a couple on the nose, and they've died. But my thing was,
so he's thinking the big one. Yeah,
he does that, and then it looks like the spaceship is taking off, and they're all celebrating. And I was like, oh, so does the cop just go to space? Is the cop just in space now with the rest of the living aliens? But then the whole thing explodes.
But then you're like, oh, how was Hansen survived?
Rip
he
Hansen.
was still inside. Rip Hansen. But then a whole car comes from very high in the sky and manages to land on the ground. And the Perenzi brothers and Hansen are inside the little clown car. Which I guess at the same time we can imply that actually could be huge inside because it had all of the clowns inside.
Yes, it could be.
Can be that kind of effect. But yes, they have survived and they're alive, and he can now do that weird thing to Debbie. And Hansen can be very strange, and the Perenzi brothers are just the Perenzi brothers.
Yeah, they just want to fuck.
And
as soon as they land, they're thinking about fucking. That's just what they got, that dog in them, man. They just land and they're like, all right, clowns are dead, who we fucking, you know?
Yeah.
They just love it.
And that's it. And it wraps it. It's an hour and 20 seconds. It's not a long haul. It's, it is a short one kind of thing. I thought it felt quite well paced and within time. I think you said you felt it was actually felt a bit long.
Yeah, I think mainly because like it's really light on story, and it just feels like it's like a clown doing something, and then the next scene is a clown doing something, and it just feels very much like it's that, and then it gets to the Mike and Hanson are like
from scene
really
to scene to scene.
Yeah, it feels very much it's just a
I think
collection of scenes.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, thinking of that kind of B movie film, I feel like that's what most of these kind of creature features are like quite often. There's not really that much to them. We don't get that much backstory for the character, and I'm not really there for it. To be honest, I was here for the clowns to be fucking idiots, and I thought they found there was some quite inventive ways of doing that.
Yeah.
But then, this is my first time watching it, so I was quite excited to actually get to watch this one, because I'd never seen it before, and I was kind of in the mood for a kind of a fun, light-hearted kind of, which is what I was expecting, and pretty much what we got. I also thought the soundtrack was pretty cool. I thought that was quite the soundtrack in the background was quite fun, including the theme was pretty good. Do you want to? Have you got some on social?
Yeah, I have one.
Do you want to do those before we jump into the big question?
Yeah, and I will say, like, obviously every week we put what film we're putting up, but I have a particular bone to pick with the Cast Me to Hell community this week, because we put up about In the Mouth of Madness. We got 5 likes. We put up, usually we get a couple. However, for one film that we're going to be discussing, I'll reveal the amount we got when we do that. But for this film, for Killer Klowns from Outer Space, we had 77 likes, and we had 15 comments, and we've just had another one comment as we're recording. So I don't know why everybody's wanting to have their opinion shared on this film, but we're going to do it.
I think because it is probably cult, whereas Mouth of Madness, although we said cult, I don't think that's actually got that big of a following at all. I know barely anyone who's ever even heard of it, kind of thing. Yep. So I think it is a case of, I think this is a much bigger, like the horror community, this is a much bigger film than Maps of Madness.
Maybe.
And a much funner film if people are looking for a bit of a fun
maybe if we're looking for a bit of fun.
Which is what some people just want, fun horrors.
Yeah, maybe. So the Nerdstalgic podcast said that they recently reviewed it and absolutely fell in love with it. Creepy, silly, funny, totally 80s, smiling all the way through. The Horror Stands podcast, this film is so fun and creative. Dissect that horror, it's an absolute blast. It's a must watch for horror fans, and I feel a great gateway to B-movie madness. And the general consensus was that people absolutely loved this film. Ending with Evil Eric, who said, "Love me some Killer Klowns, such a fun watch." And just then somebody else has now liked it. as we commented, I don't know why everybody's wanting to like this post all of a sudden. The film that we're going to be doing shortly had even more, which is baffling given the film.
Yeah, madness.
But we'll fish that out there and keep them there, you know. Now the main question that is on everybody's lips, is it must-see
horror? So if it must-see horror, This is a hard one for me because I really enjoyed this film more than I expected to.
Yeah.
Cheesy, bad dialogue, I accept all of that because it's exactly what it intended to be, I think. I don't think it's trying to mask it.
Yeah.
You know, unlike when we watch certain ones and they're trying really hard to be this certain kind of horror and they're just not quite achieving it, and we're still fighting over those ones being, whereas I kind of feel like this one needs to be lauded for its inventiveness and, you know, its approach to the source material. You know, and it's so... The other thing is it's so different than most of the other horrors that are on that list or in most lists that I see. And that's the bit that's hard for me. It's like, you think of the top 100 horror films.
Yeah.
And sadly, the top 100 makes you think of, like, more classic, more accomplished, maybe, horror films. Which is the same reason I didn't feel that things like Event Horizon quite hit the met because it was a mash of older, like it was a mash of other films' ideas that was mashed into one new of it, and it didn't feel quite as accomplished as those ones. But yeah, I'm struggling to decide. I've literally even put in my notes, we'll decide on the day.
Well,
which was today, because I watched it today.
Yeah. So we'll decide in about 5 hours.
Yeah, I will decide. I will go back and forth. Because I'm conflicted.
Okay, well,
I don't think you're as conflicted. So
I will give you a small ramble to think about it. I do. I think it is a fun film. I think I agree that it's inventive, like in terms of using the kind of clown tropes as the way of snatching people, the cotton candy nutsacks, the dinosaur, like shadow puppet, them all coming out of the big car, the cream pies, the popcorn gun. I think, and the fucking sniffer dog is absolutely class. And I think it is, as somebody said, I think it is a really good gateway into B-movie horror. It's not scary. It did have a slight element of creepiness in a few scenes, but overall, I don't think it's a scary film. It's B-movie. It's a horror comedy, but I am denying it. I'm stamping it as this isn't a must-see horror. I'm afraid. People loved it. I will be booed online. I will be marched and paraded through the streets naked. They will hang me. But I've got to say, I don't think it is a must-see horror. It's a fun film. I would recommend people check it out if they're at a loose end. But I wouldn't put it on a list of must-see horror. You've had your time to decide. Now you must decide whether you walk alongside me or whether you boo me.
That's the fit. I think if it was a larger thing, like I saw someone say literally a comment online that on Letterboxd and literally say like it's a must see on one. It's a must see. It should be on one of those 1001 films to see before you die. If I'm choosing 1001 films, 100% this should be in 1001 horror films because this is great fun. And the thing is with this one is I could imagine rewatching this film now.
Yeah,
I've seen people who put this as part of their say like Halloween traditions and stuff like that, and I can see why. Because this is the kind of fun one I would want to watch around Halloween.
Yeah,
the same reason I like watching Gremlins around Christmas because it's a fun Christmas horror kind of thing in that style. I'm gonna say I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna say must see. I'm gonna say I think you should watch this film because I had such expectations, not low expectations. But I had such expectations that this was not going to work as a film.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't want to. And the fact I'm leaving and I actually want to watch it again, for me, I think out of a lot of these films, because actually quite a few of these films that I probably have said must-see horror, I have probably seen several times, or I've seen them once, but I'm not necessarily jumping to watch them again. This is the first one where I'm like, I think I could have fun watching this again. So I'm going to say it's must-see horror. I'm going to join it and I'm going to go with the safe bet and not be ripped apart by the community.
That is a very rogue opinion. I did not expect you to have that. But
I was going both ways and I'm just going to jump for it and we've gone.
Absolutely done him. Little fucking poke to the ribs there.
We've both had films so far where we have literally taken it down to the wire, I think, of like, is it or is it not? And I think this is my one. And I might come back and be like, maybe I shouldn't have put that on.
Maybe.
When I'm denied, when you're like, you've hit your 100, you're out.
Yeah, you're out.
You've hit your 100, you can't choose anymore. But, considering we've only got 100 to do, I don't see how that could happen.
Well, as we always do when we've reached a tie, come and let us know what you think of Killer Klowns from Outer Space. If you think it's a must-see horror, or if it isn't. If you think it is a must-see horror, put hashtag Team Seb, let us know. If you think it isn't, put hashtag Team Bobby. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at CMTH Podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a lovely review. We are currently trapped in a ball sack of cotton candy and we are fighting our way out to come and bring you more episodes. So please hit that subscribe button, leave us a lovely review. We will see you next week. Bye bye.